Charlie Kirk, one of the most important and beloved figures among young people, was assassinated on September 10th, right on the eve of 9/11, probably the date with the most symbolism worldwide. But this, moreover, does not happen as an isolated event, but rather seems to be part of a kind of well-orchestrated script of global chaos. And in the same week, rebellion in Nepal, massive riots in France. The United States attacks Venezuela, Russia, China, India, and North Korea declare their union against the West, and above all, Israel attacks the sovereign territory of Qatar. Are all these really just isolated incidents, or are we facing a global smokescreen meticulously designed to divert attention from what truly matters? Let's analyze it. We'll start, as always, from the beginning. On September 10th, at their own event, in fact, at Utah Valley University, Charlie Kirk, one of the most important figures, especially among young people in the Trumpist movement, was killed. As far as we know today, a sniper shot him directly in the neck and fled. The FBI, which by the way has not found the perpetrator of the crime, released images of the suspect fleeing the area. Dark clothes, cap, glasses. They've even offered a $100,000 reward for any information about his whereabouts. The striking thing about all this is not just the crime itself, but the date it was committed, exactly the eve of September 11th. Obviously, theories about what happened and why it was done didn't take long to appear. In the case of the false flag operation, the Republican Party was somewhat lacking a prominent figure to present against George Floyd. Did the FBI know much more than it wants to admit about whether this was the work of a professional sniper? The truth is that Kirk made people uncomfortable, questioned things, stirred things up, pointed people out, and suddenly he disappeared. And he didn't disappear at just any time, but on the eve of September 11th, a date full of symbolism, an open wound in the United States and the whole world, which marked the beginning of countless wars and a complete change of paradigm. A symbol in every sense, but used exactly for what? Without a doubt, both the United States and its adversaries know how to use the calendar as a kind of weapon. And sometimes it might seem that a simple date chosen at random can even be more important than thousands and thousands of speeches. The key is to choose it well. Of course, it's not just the chosen date that matters to us, but the entire context on a global level. It's just that during that same week, events occurred that might seem absolutely unrelated, but that without a doubt should have been. Mucho it high, therefore political. They happened exactly during the same week as the assassination of warship. First of all, we have the violent rebellion in Nepal, which not only claimed the lives of dozens of its citizens, but also, among hundreds of injured, left the main victim, which has been the entire government, with the Prime Minister at the forefront. And here we're not just talking about a single country, but about the belt, that kind of buffer zone between China and India, and the stability of the entire South Asian region. Secondly, massive riots in France, which are shaking the country even at this very moment. Neither of these two news stories, none of this has been talked about much in the Western media, or to start talking about it. They immediately moved on to what today seems to be the main news, which is in fact the murder of Kirk. At the same time, something happens that should become the news of the year: the alliance between Russia, China, India, and North Korea. They openly demonstrated by challenging, you could even say threatening, the West, and therefore, first and foremost, the United States. The international stage is shifting while the whole world is watching Utah. In Latin America, another breaking news story: the United States attacks Venezuela. In what, according to the versions we know today, seems like some kind of covert operation with casualties involved, and a very clear attempt to pressure Caracas. But once again, there is practically total media silence about it. But without a doubt, the biggest news of all this is the attack that Israel has carried out against the sovereign territory of Qatar. Yes, they were supposedly trying to eliminate the Hamas negotiating team, but what right did they have to do that exactly? I mean, are we talking about an unprecedented provocation? And meanwhile, from the United States, Donald Trump was mumbling whether he knew about the events beforehand, whether he had no idea what was going to happen in Qatar in terms of an attack by Israel. And wow, right at that moment of maximum tension, Charlie Kirk is assassinated. Was it just a simple coincidence? Did Israel want to send someone a message? Or are we simply seeing an international board in constant motion where each move follows the previous one? And of course, this is not the first time, not by a long shot, that we've seen this pattern. In fact, the United States has a very long history of using distraction as a weapon. September 11th, followed by the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, internal scandals covered up with unidentified flying object stories, and political crimes meant to distract the public's attention. From the fronts where the future was really being decided, the mention of September 11th by Charlie Kirk on the eve of September 11th on one hand, and in the midst of Israel's unprecedented attacks against Qatar on the other, fits. I completely believe in this kind of pattern of diverting attention from what's really happening in the world. Charlie Kirk became a martyr. Nepal on the verge of a violent revolution, France in turmoil, Venezuela under attack, Israel challenging Qatar, the Eurasian world strengthened. All of this has happened in the same week. Simple coincidences or a carefully synchronized global plan? I want to know your opinion about whether this is a message coming directly from those in power, a distraction maneuver, or simply the sum of events within the geopolitical board. Absolutely chaotic. What is clear is that this doesn't end here, not by a long shot. If this happened on the eve of September 11th, what happens next will most likely be even more important. So subscribe, because here we follow the movement of the pieces on the global chessboard, trying to show what others constantly want to hide. I'm Liu Sivaya, and this is Journalism Without Filters.